Hello and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I'm Vicky Montague, and today I am joined by Lucy Westwood. Now, this is a delight because Lucy is someone. When did we meet? I think was it about 18 months ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe 2 years ago.
Maybe if I actually can't remember.
Not
But
gonna
yeah,
lie.
some 18 months to 2 years ago, something like
Something
that.
like that. And the, I would say the transformation that I've seen in you is mind-blowing, actually. Like just the difference from when we first had a conversation to the conversations that we have now, and just the way you are in the world is just so different. I just felt compelled to ask you to just come and have a conversation with me about what's happened, I guess. Um, so when I first met you, you had concerns about one of your children, and we had a chat. And about halfway through, I remember you kind of went, do you coach adults as well as children? I really think this conversation might be useful for me. And it kind of went from there, didn't it?
Yeah,
And I would say at that time you were super busy, super caught up in the stories of the mind, like most of us. Um, before entering this conversation, I totally resonated with where you were at because it was so familiar to where I had been. Um, just trying to control everything, trying to make everything work, to-do lists coming out of your ears, never any time for you to do anything for you, just like constant pressure, but an internal pressure, an internal, um, you know, uh, needing to achieve, to do, to be constantly on the go, um, and listening to every thought that was being presented by the mind, innocently, like I say, like me too, when I hadn't come across this understanding, these conversations. Um, and I remember early on in our conversations, we talked about how different you were when you were on holiday,
yeah,
and how there was a totally different experience, like a different Lucy almost. Like there was Lucy normal day that was busy and constantly on the go and never really, just rushing and, yeah, like unkind to herself, I guess, to a
yeah,
certain degree. And then Holiday Lucy was well chilled, relaxed, fun, joyful, noticing stuff, happy. And it was the contrast was just really interesting.
yeah,
Um, and how there were these almost two kind of people, if you like, going
yeah,
on. And the invitation that I gave to you, I think, at that time was, well, what if Holiday Lucy is like who you really are? What if
yeah,
Holiday Lucy is like the default, what you were born with, and the other Lucy, it has just been taught, like learnt, kind of acquired, if you like,
yeah,
behavior that sort of covered over that natural joy and love and excitement and passion and fun. And so the conversations kind of unfolded from there. Um, and yeah, so I'd love to kind of hear from your point of view, um, yeah, where were you at? Can you remember back to then, like how it felt to you, and what's sort of changed, what's different now? I'd love to just, yeah, if you can start there, that'd be great.
yeah, of course. Thanks, Vicky. So I think thinking back, it's really easy to because those thoughts are still around. They're still there all the
Yeah.
time. These conditioned thoughts of wanting to try and control things and get things done. And I think thinking back way before we met, Vicky, really in my 20s, I had a feeling back then that whatever I am, which I now believe is just a bundle of thoughts, was getting in my way. But I couldn't understand why. So I started this a seeking really, a journey of reading a lot of self-help, right from, I'm 48 now, right from my early 20s. And I just couldn't understand though why I seemed to self-sabotage, get in my own way, not see much joy in life. I very much lived from what I call, and this is a term I got from Susan Jeffers, who wrote Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, which is one of the
Mm.
books I read in my 20s. She used to talk, or she talks about the when then game. So when I've done this, then I'll be happy. So for me, it was the societal norm. So when I get a better job, then I'll be happy. When I own my own house, when I get married, when I have children, it was a never ending trying to find happiness in the future. And on top of that, there was absolutely this day to day. It's even within the day. It was like, well, when I've done this, then I can rest.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about this,
Yeah.
didn't you? When I've got to the end of that to-do list that PS never ends, then I can let myself be happy. And it's just a really quite miserable way to live, I guess. There were the odd pockets of happiness, but overall, I felt like I was waiting for my life to start almost,
Mm.
but intuitively knew that it was something I was doing, that life shouldn't be this complicated or difficult. But because I guess I was looking in the self-help arena, a lot of the stuff I was reading talked about techniques and changing habits and trying to change thoughts and all of that kind of thing.
Mm.
So I was very diligent, working. That was another thing on the to-do list, to be
Yeah.
honest, Um, let's try this technique, let's try that, let's try positive thinking, let's try meditating, let's try yoga, and it was almost like, I know it's January the 2nd today, so it's like the new year. I'd try and reinvent myself, every few months. So now, as from this point onwards, I'm going to do this new thing or that new thing. And, it never worked. And yeah, that's really how I've lived most of my adult life, to be honest with you, waiting to feel happy when everything had fallen into place, if you like. But as I say, kind of knew it's life didn't need to be like that. And I could see intellectually, and as I started reading and then met you, Vicky, that, other people, it perhaps wasn't circumstances that were the problem, if you like. Because I used to think, well, it's because I haven't got something, or someone's not being nice to me, or I've fallen out with someone at work, they were the problems. But I started to see that the circumstances had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was how I was viewing them. And I could certainly see that with other people. I used to look at being an avid people watcher, look at other people and think, well, why aren't they worried about that thing? Or why hasn't that upset
Mm.
them? Or conversely, why are they really upset about this thing that I'm not upset about? And we talked about that quite a bit, didn't we, as well, Vicky? So, for example, money is something I've never worried about too much. Oddly, I mean, there's been times where I've had very little, but I've just always, it's just not been a triggering issue for me. Whereas a friend not replying to a text has in the past sent me into a spiral of panic and anxiety that maybe I'd done something for days. And I started to see the arbitrary nature of this, like, well, it's just everything's fine. It's just the way I'm seeing it. And I guess that led me onto this huge journey around and discussing with you, Vicky, and reading many books and listening to lots of podcasts, but around, what are thoughts? Because I'm believing all these thoughts and they're really quite arbitrary, and starting to see through ultimately that our thoughts are just, we don't have no control over them. They just pop into our heads and we don't have to take them seriously. So all these thoughts I had that when I get to this certain place, then I'll be happy, which was really creating all that stress that you
Yeah.
observed in me, these to-do lists and busyness. I was just trying to get somewhere. Um, it was all based on random thoughts that weren't true. And I think one thing you said to me in one of our sessions was very early on, which was quite shocking to me, was what if right now everything's fine? And I thought, well, how can it be? I don't feel fine. But you challenged me by saying, well, what if right now everything is completely as it should be and completely fine? And that was something that was really helpful to explore, for sure. And I think maybe during our conversations, Vicky, I can't remember now, but because I'd sort of started off with this trying to understand this thing, the three principles around what thoughts aren't really real and that we're all absolutely fine. And then that really led me to this exploration around non-duality, that we're all not separate. I think my brain's naturally quite analytical, and I just kept having more and more questions, and, which I think led me to this exploration around non-duality in the books that we're both reading and listening to. And for me, for my body mind, I should say, that's been the real unlocker of it all.
Mm.
So ultimately, what I'm seeing or knowing almost is that are who I think I am, because I used to think I was this separate individual, and I guess it's the source of all the issues really for and believing all the thoughts. Who had a personality and likes and dislikes. Identified as an anxious person, a person who found it hard to sometimes trust others. Um, but all of that is just an illusion. I think this is where the explanations really led me, that our egos, or whatever we want to call it, our sense of self, is all based on a misunderstanding, really. Um, so when we're born, we're told, from the moment we're born, really, and then we start to see this, that we're a separate person with a name, and we're conditioned in certain ways, and we can't control any of it. We've got our own unique genetics, we've got our own unique conditioning based on our childhood, our parents, maybe our siblings if we've got them, the people we meet, our teachers, our friends, and all of this forms this personality, but it's all based on conditioning and beliefs. And what I've started to see and know is that changes all the time. It's not so. When I look back at the way I was in my 20s, it's really different to now in many ways. Some bits are the same, some bits are super different. But yet, me as a body, mind, as a human being here now, I'm still here. So that isn't really what we are. If that makes sense. That isn't really who we are. And we've been reading with Vicky the Sal Poe book, and one thing that he talks about is there's this presence that's always been there. And that was a huge moment for me. So yeah, there's this thing that was there in my childhood, that was there in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s, and it's here now. And that's the consistent thing. That's who we all, or what we all are. It's hard with language because we have to talk in subject object, but it's that's it. It's presence, it's awareness, it's before thought. And it's hard to almost, I don't know if I'm making any sense here at all, Vicky, but we were just having a quick chat before we started recording this, and that's just such a relief, because everything, and I'm absolutely in this journey and I've been reading a lot about it, but the more, I suppose it's not, reading really helps and being in the conversation, but it's seeing it, and that's changes it. But it doesn't change anything, but it changes everything. So it doesn't change anything. I'm still in the same job. I've got two kids. I'm functioning as a human being in our society. Yet that belief in us, that I am this person with all these problems, just falls away. And even another sort of thing that I've seen very recently is that everything we do isn't us. There isn't someone choosing. It's just what's happening as well, which has just been, it's such a relief, really. Because we hold so much responsibility on our shoulders when we think we are a separate being, having to take responsibility and um, and choose what to do. God, and that's certainly where I was before. I felt it was all on my shoulders to be happy, but also be a good person, daughter and mum and friend and colleague at work. God, there's a lot on your shoulders when you think you have to do it all, isn't it? And what I've seen is that's just life living through us. We don't, our brains tell us we chose, but actually, it's going to sound crazy, but it's even simple stuff like I've chosen, in inverted commas, to make a cup of tea before this call. But actually, what I see now is that just happened based on millions of variables, like, the fact that my mum, she told me she started giving me tea. This is in the 70s, so that you wouldn't do this with a baby now. When I was about 4 months old, I had
No.
tea. I love tea. But, maybe if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't like tea. Um, it's a habit that before a call, I'll get a cup of tea. It's just this sort of small things like that. They're happening all the time. And our bodies, and then you talk to me about this a lot, Vicky, that's just what happens. My love of lists, it's still there. That's just something that, I don't know if it's my love, it's just something that happens. It just happens. So I think seeing that we are, whatever you want to call it, just present awareness, what you feel in direct experience without thinking, is there all the time, means that everything else falls away. This ego, the fact there's a doer, and then God, isn't life's just beautiful then? Because and there's really nothing to worry about, I suppose, ultimately. Because what is there to worry about? If I walked out of the house now and something bad happened, I don't know, a car veered off the road, I would know what would happen was my body would just do something. I don't need to predict the future. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen in 5 minutes or next year, because we all have that innate capacity to deal with whatever happens as it happens. So yes. So I feel like I've just gone off on a
Wow.
massive monologue there. But that's what's coming out right now.
I love everything you said. There's so much in there that we could pick apart, if you like, untangle and explore.
Yeah,
But just what you kind of alluded to at the end there of, you know, life is so beautiful when you're just kind of present, I guess. And I know for me, when I used to hear people talk like that, I'd be like, well, that's all very well, and it sounds lovely, but nothing's going to get done if I'm just in this la la land of everything's
yeah,
fine, there's no problems, and let's just float around and not listen to anything that we think, and there's no problems then. So, and to me, it used to sound like, well, that's lovely for you, but I live in the real world and there are problems, so they need to be fixed and I need to do it. And I don't see it that way now, but I'd love to sort of kind of hear your experience of, does this understanding that you've now, well, I wouldn't say you've got, because we're just, it's a ongoing process, right? Like we're both
yeah.
on this together. But does yeah, what does it look like on day to day? Like, does it mean that you're just, sat around like in a lovely la la happy cloud, or
Yeah.
not doing anything? Or like you said that you still have lists. So yeah,
What do
so
you? Well, that's the thing. Nothing
mm,
changes because
mm,
that's the thing. So I, what I believe, it's so hard to say this with
it's
language because I don't think that is in me, but um, nothing changes because I'm being lived. This body mind is being lived. So my conditioning, like I say, that all these things that make us all unique humans, just like every tree is unique and every animal is unique. That life, the way I am seeing this is that life lives through us all living creatures. Life is living through us. So there's three guinea pigs next to me now, and they're not sat around doing nothing. They are being lived. They are actually, I think they're asleep, but at the moment.
okay.
But later on, um, when they awake, they will chew some hay or have a look round, or have some water. They might play, and that's just what happens to all of us. So
Mm.
nothing's changed. I don't now sit in a, oh, what isn't life wonderful? I work, I write lists, I get things done. That's just what happens,
Mm.
if that makes sense. So nothing actually changes. But I suppose when the thoughts come up that, oh, I need to get that done, I can just see that, oh, that's my conditioned thoughts. I can choose whether to engage with it or not. I might say, yeah, I will. Um, I think I've done some sort of thought experiments on this that I found really helpful because I did, for me, one of my, I mean, I think there's all things that when you start looking in this direction that there is no doer, there's often things that we all are quite attached to and think, well, yeah, maybe there's no doer for loads of stuff, but this other thing, I really need to control that. And it might be health, or for me, it's being on top of stuff, that's what my
Mm.
conditioning. Um, but I have done a few days where I've tried these experiments of just sitting at my desk for work. Work's a good example
Mm.
because there are things that there's expectations, I suppose, from the
Mm.
company that things will happen and be done. But I've had a go a few times at just watch, it sounds funny, but sitting in awareness
Mm.
and almost watching what gets done, if that makes sense, rather than feeling that I, as an ego self, am doing it. And that's a really fascinating thing to
Mhm.
try because things do get done. I suppose the difference is there's less suffering around them. There's less angst and oh God and oh I need to do it. It just kind of things just get done. Maybe a good example is when you're in a flow state.
Mhm.
That happens occasionally. I mean, like I know you paint and do art and
Mhm.
things, and I don't know for you if that you find yourself in a flow state. And for me, sometimes at work, I have to write at work, and sometimes I'll just write some stuff. It's stuff about for work, that might be being sent out to customers, and then 15 minutes later, oh, I don't know. I don't know where I was. I actually
Right.
wasn't there. That was just the thought that just flowed through, and I think yeah, for me, everything is still exactly the same. There's still this. I just my body mind likes feel. I don't know. There's a feeling that's positive when I write a list based on my conditioning. Um, but that working through of it, I suppose, or because I don't always do what's on the list. By the way, that's the thing. We think we're the chooser, the doer. We think we're in control. That might not happen. I might forget the list, or I might be inspired to do something different. But so it's just so hard to sort of say. I don't know if this is making any sense at all. But I think there's less struggle for me in getting things done because they just get done because
Right.
I am not doing them. They are happening through, you know because I'm awake and it's just that's what's happening, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
No, I love that.
I think as well things occur to me more, I
Yes.
suppose, in this understanding. So before, because I thought it was all about me, it was my responsibility to get the list done, then even if I felt tired or I'd suppress any urges to do anything other than the list, I suppose. That was the difference before. So even if sometimes I would need the lube, I think, oh, I'll just still do this other thing because I felt so compelled.
Mm.
Whereas in the understanding that there's no doer, I feel I can sort of tap because trying to be more in the position of presence and awareness. It's just when the thought occurs, presence awareness, then I fall back, maybe I don't know how to explain it into that, then there's more intuition, I suppose, comes through, whatever you want to
Yes.
call it. There's like, oh, maybe I'll do that because I just feel like doing that. That might not be the thing I thought I was going to do today. If that makes sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
so a long answer, but I suppose yes, it isn't this like oh everything's lovely. It's just it's more there's less pain around everything. I suppose, well, there isn't any. I suppose that's the difference. It's just everything seems just it not as unfolding because it's just here really. And there's a joy in that because I suppose there's this joy of just being alive and without all those beliefs that you're a separate entity who's got these things you have to do. You can just see the beauty in the fact, oh God, look at this. Sometimes look at this. Wow, that we're in life. Oh, it's just beautiful. It's amazing. But yeah,
And that
yeah,
is, that is such a shift of focus almost, because
yeah,
the way I see it is that we are conditioned to look into the direction of lack and what's wrong and what needs to be different and how we can be different and what we need to do, and like we're kind of almost trained to look there. And what I'm
yeah,
hearing from you is like there's a different place to look. There's a, like we can look and see the truth of how life unfolds. When we look back at the things that have happened, if you like, we can look back and kind of go, well, how did that even happen? Like, how did I get that job? Or how did I get that promotion? Or how did I get that friend? Or how did I get that contact? Or whatever it might be. It's like to looking kind of differently at life, I guess, and through a
yeah,
different lens of, well, I didn't really do that. It just sort of happened. Like that person
yeah,
contacted me and then I followed their suggestion and then that happened and then this happened and then yeah, but the story will be I did that. I did that. I got that job. I got that promotion. I made that friend. I But
yeah,
when we look at it slightly differently of, well, like how? We start to see how life is unfolding. Like you say, that there's just this sort of force within us. And I think you described it really beautifully of like you can walk out your house and a car might, come out of nowhere and your body knows what to do, like it just moves. And
yeah,
and just seeing that that's actually happening all the time.
yeah,
And that, like you said, it takes off that level of responsibility of I've got to make all this happen.
yeah,
And I think Christmas is a great example. I always talk about it with clients. It's like, and it, relates to your to-do lists. There's things that in this world of form need to happen. We need to get our kids to school. We need to make them make lunch or make their lunch for them or whatever. There's things that kind of need to happen. Christmas, if we want to have a Christmas with presents and a nice meal with friends and family or whatever. There's things that need to happen. There's buying and wrapping and preparing and cooking and all of that stuff. Like we know that has to happen in order for that day to be the a way that we want it to be. The way I used to be was like, I've got to make this happen. What am I, I've got to buy these gifts. What am I going to buy people? And how am I going to cook the dinner? And, I'd be very much like, uh, it's
yeah,
me or me. And what I now see, I guess, is like, okay, so that's going to happen. I don't know how. I know it will because that's what I desire. I desire a day that has these things in it. But I can kind of just let go of the how and know that it will and that I'll be inspired at certain points. An idea will come into my mind of that thing for that person. They would love that. I remember they talked about it 3 years ago, and that's the
yeah,
perfect gift. Whereas when we're in there, I've got to figure out what the perfect gift is. It's like you said, there's just so much stress and constraint in there
yeah,
that when we
yeah,
start to see that the more we kind of just relax, the more that we open up and allow intuition to arise or notice that it's even there
yeah,
and just play,
yeah,
like it's just a playing, isn't it? Like I would say to you, just play with it. Like don't
yeah,
take my word for it. Just play with
yeah,
this possibility that you don't have to be so tightly in control. What would happen if you just, like you say, you've got your to-do list, okay, what would happen if you just kind of went, okay, what do I feel like doing off this list today, rather than I've got to do the thing that's number one on
yeah,
the list because I that's what my head says
yeah,
I've got to do. It's like, well, which thing feels most fun? I mean,
yeah,
none of them particularly, but which is the most, could be the most fun or the most enjoyable? And we'll hear our mind saying none of them, they're all boring, I don't want to do any of it, blah blah blah. Okay, okay, but which one, we're going to do something off the list, which one might have a sense of lightness to it, could be
yeah,
fun. All right, we'll start with that
yeah,
and be guided even on the list to what might feel the nicest. And to me, it's that's it. It's like just aligning to. what feels most easy.
Yeah, yeah, following the ease, I think that's huge as well. And I think, when I was talking earlier about looking back, life felt really hard again. So
Yeah,
I had this feeling, A, that I was getting in my own way, but also that life shouldn't be this hard. Why is it so
yeah,
hard?
yeah.
And then I kind of knew I was making it hard for myself. But I think the crux of it all for me has been seeing there isn't a me.
Mm.
Because when you really see that, and you have to see it for yourself, really. That's this sort of, it sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Because I'm saying you've got to see it for
There are
yourself,
many.
but there isn't a self.
Yeah.
But you do have to see that. Well, that's for me being the
Mm.
journey that I'm on. And I saying to you before we started recording, I had a real insight yesterday around this because I've been reading this non-duality stuff for ages. And feeling, yeah, I get this intellectually that we're conditioned and all of this, but it was yesterday. I don't know why. I was reading some stuff and it was just the way it was written. I probably read it before and all of that. But being in this conversation is so great because you hear different things each time.
Mm.
But yeah, what I really saw yesterday was just that direct experience of what never changes. I've kind of read about this a lot, but I was saying to you as ever before, it was kind of just when you go into your senses, I suppose, so for me, the thing I read was about seeing, using our eyes. Um, and when you're looking at stuff, you don't need thought. I know it sounds a very obvious thing to say, you don't, do you? I mean, it's the same with touch, but then say I touch my hands now, then I'll think, oh, there's a thought comes about feeling my thumb against my fingers. But I don't know why seeing seemed like a really obvious one when I saw it. So hard to say it, but I mean, yeah, I'm seeing all the time when my eyes are open, but I'm not thinking about what I'm looking at. Oh, that's what's always there. That's it. That's the present awareness. Because one thing I've struggled with on this journey in non-duality is that and the same for you, Vicky, I think the same for a lot of us, my thinking never seems to stop.
Yeah,
It's always there. And I thought many
yeah,
times, I know this isn't, I don't want to, I tried meditating, found it quite hard. I know it's not about stopping these thoughts, but it's the crux is not believing that they are about a separate person. So then going back to the list thing, it's just relate to the list. It changes everything on the list because even when you're looking at it going, oh, what will be easier? There could still be a belief that it's still a separate me doing something.
yes.
And I think my point for me, it's really started to fall away when I've looked at what I'm not. I am not my thoughts. I am not my ego. And the reason I know I'm not those things is they change all the time and I have no control over them. We don't control who our parents are, our siblings are. We don't control where we're born. We don't control our genetics. We don't control when our hair starts to go grey. We're not controlling our food being digested. We're not controlling our breathing or our hearts beating. And we don't control any of it. We don't control our thoughts. The thoughts that might pop into my head in a second or in an hour, they're nothing to do with me because I don't exist. There isn't a me. There isn't one. And I think when you and there's there's so many exercises in the reading you can do that are all about. I mean, Sal Pedder's a lot taking holidays, and I think that's what he's pointing to. They're all pointing to this. What doesn't change? So if you're not all of that, all of that stuff, because that changes. So how can that be you?
Yeah.
And when you sit here, where is the self? There's some great books on this. Where is it? When scientists look in the brain, they can't find one. There's a great book, Christine Bauer, No Self, No Problem. I think that talks a lot about this. But when you start to see there isn't one, it's all made up. Then everything falls away. And then, so what's left? I suppose the question is, if I'm not that, what am I? Because I'm here. That's it. So I'm a human being, Vicky, you're a human, aren't you? We're sat here and we're here. And we know we're here. Now, what knows we're here? We don't need to think about it, do we? We don't need to think, I'm here. We just know we are because we're looking at each other. And I'm feeling quite warm because I've got a little heater. There's all these sensations. I know I'm alive. I know I'm a living being. And I know there's lots of other living beings, obviously billions of humans and animals and plants. Well, this is it. we're this is what we are. We're life, or whatever you want to call it. So we say God, we're love, we're joy, and that's it. So when there's no self, the rest of it's absolutely fine. Now the thoughts are still there. Of
Yeah, yeah.
course they are. I had a, no doubt I get pangs of anxiety about things that
Mhm.
trigger my, not me, they trigger my conditioned brain, you know, and that's okay because it's just a feeling, it's just a sensation. And that's it's the crux of it, I think, is seeing what you're not. But I don't know, everyone has their own journey based on their own genetics and our own unique who we are. But I suppose another thing, I don't want to talk too long, but I just wanted to mention is a sense of purpose is another thing that I've been exploring. So I always thought I needed to have a sense of purpose to be a valuable human. And I've never, honestly, I've struggled. So my daughter wants to be a paramedic, and I'm so happy for her. My son often goes, God, she's lucky she knows what she wants to do. I mean, whether she will be one, I don't know. But I know what he means because it's lovely. She's like, that's what I want to do. She's got this sense that of purpose, of helping people. But and some people have got that, some people haven't. It doesn't really matter, does it? But that's something I've really explored. Like, am I what should I be doing? I should be leaving some sort of legacy. It's like wanting this importance, this ego
Yeah,
thing, maybe I should write some book or give something to the world. And as the ego falls away, because that's another ego thing, wanting to feel important and special, what I've started to see is the purpose is living. That's it. That our purpose
yeah.
is what we are. We're alive. And isn't that wonderful? And Salvador Poe talks about being ordinary. And I remember saying to you when we were discussing this, um, what a relief. It's quite affronting to the ego because no one wants, I suppose, the ego doesn't want to be ordinary. God, that's a bit boring. But wow, we are. But the sense, my intuition is that our unique body minds, because we're all unique, aren't we? There's so many different factors of genetics and conditioning and all of that. That's our purpose. That's I think kind of we're here, just as all the dogs and cats and we're all unique and we're life is living through us and what gets created will get created and that's it. So there's no need to strive to become something or do something in the future. Yeah. So
Oh,
it,
such a relief.
it is, isn't it?
I
It's
mean, me the
easy.
same as you had that whole thing of I need to make something of myself and like, I'm wasting my life because I'm not doing whatever it is the mind has decided conditioning has told me I should be doing. And, I mean, society, we pick that up in the Western world, right?
Yeah.
That in order to be something, we need to earn lots of money. We need to be, in a high-powered job. We need to have a fancy car, and all these things. And when you just said about cats and dogs and all the other animals and stuff, it just occurred to me, it's like we don't ever put a purpose on them. We don't ever
No.
think like, right, dog, you're here in order to do whatever. It's like, no, they're just here. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have any ideas about animals having to be anything other than just alive.
Yeah.
And there's just something so beautiful in that. Like, what if it is, this is it, this is it, and this is everything, and there
Yes.
is nowhere to get to, and we don't, there is no purpose other than to just be, to just,
Yes.
and because in the being there is that is what we're all seeking. Because ultimately all of that stuff, the nice car, the big job, the whatever, it's all about having something, right? And that something is generally the happiness that you were talking about,
Yeah.
if when then thing. When I have
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
then I'll be happy. And like for most humans, that's the endless search. It's like to get that thing, so then I'll be whatever it is. And generally it's happiness, peaceful, joyful, whatever. Like we're all
Yeah.
searching for that, but it's here
It's
when
already
we're
here.
not.
Exactly. Everything we want, we've always had. It's always here. That's it. the purpose of it is just to be alive, like all the other animals. I don't believe we're any different at all. We've evolved these brains that think that our brains is important. Our brains keep us alive, and part of that is thought. And with thought comes creation. Thought's
Amazing
wonderful.
stuff.
Thought isn't bad, I don't think.
No.
But we've just been conditioned into believing that we're this separate, we're a separate individual that has all the responsibilities on our shoulders, and that is an illusion. And I don't believe we can get rid of that, but we can
No.
see it for what it is, the
Right.
mirage, the illusion. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
still be there, but as you say, we don't need to, like, even the list example, our thoughts might be telling us one thing, and that's okay, but we don't have to act on that. We can see, oh,
Right.
there, that's just the illusion, that's just the mob conditioning, that's okay. I think where it's been in the present moment, that's it. That's where we are. And nearly always, I think, when we suffer, we're not in that moment, are we? The
No.
list is about the future, isn't it? And equally, regrets or wanting to be back in the past. Either way, that's where the suffering is. In the present moment, everything is absolutely fine. And if in the present moment there was something happen, we'd know what to do. If you
Yeah.
know that it wasn't fine because something had happened or there was a crisis, I don't know. That's okay because, as you say, as you said before, we kick into action. We're being lived.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, and I think just to finish like that, the whole thought thing, we can get into this idea that, oh my gosh, thought's awful. I mustn't believe anything I think, and
yeah,
I need to get rid of thinking, and then we can go on a whole quest of like, I need to have a peaceful mind in order to be
yeah,
okay, and
yeah,
that's just another kind of trick of the system or
yeah,
whatever. But it's like for me, it's just seeing that thought's incredible,
yeah,
and it can be, I mean, we are gifted with thought, right? I
yeah,
mean, whether other animals think, I don't know. Whether trees think, I don't know. But to me, it seems like that is what distinguishes us from other
yeah,
life force forms. And when used for us, I mean, how incredible. We can plan a three-course meal and then write a list of all the things we need to buy and go and get those things from the supermarket. Like without thought, we wouldn't be able to do that. It's amazing. And I think it's just distinguishing between, and it comes from feeling that those thoughts
yes,
that create a restriction in any sense in the body of like I've got to do this thing and I've got to do it now, and I need to lose weight, or I need to be more healthy, or I need to, we're at the beginning of January. I'm sure there's a lot of this
yeah,
thinking going on, and like if we can relieve any of that through this conversation, great, because we don't that's the sort of thought that doesn't need to be paid attention to, because
yeah,
there's a sense of constriction that comes with it that is the gift that's telling us it's not true.
yeah,
And as soon as that's like, okay, what if I didn't follow that and came back to just here now in this moment? Is everything okay? Yes. And then there's the intuition that arises. Then there's the obvious thing to do from here that doesn't come from a mind that's being conditioned of life has to look this way, we're meant to be stick thin, we're meant to whatever. Like then we have access to, oh, actually, I don't really feel like eating the um I don't know, Cocoa Pops for breakfast. I actually feel like a banana. Like,
yeah,
but it's coming
yeah,
not from I have to eat a banana because it's healthy and I should be eating that and not go, it's like
yeah,
that just occurs to me that I'd quite like a banana.
yeah,
And when we live from that space, then we just do better. And so I
yeah,
think there's just such a distinction when just to notice the feelings that come with certain thoughts, and that it's that like that's what we don't need to pay so much attention to. And
yeah,
when we let them pass on by, then there's something else that can occur. And it's getting
yes,
interested in that. And it's getting interested in what how else can I navigate life? Because I thought I had to navigate using what my mind said, but if I don't, then what happens? And just being willing to experiment with that, I think, and that's where I'm at. It's like, like you said, I'm no different from anyone else. So you're no different from anyone else. It's just we've experimented. We're willing to look and see what else there is. Because
yes,
I remember saying to you at one point early on, like, well, how's life been going whilst you've been like listening to every thought? You know, it's like, well,
So
actually,
great. Yeah.
not great. Okay,
Yeah.
so why not experiment with a different way of operating?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you can always go back to the old one.
God,
There's nothing
exactly.
stopping.
Exactly. That's it. Life's going to happen either way. That's the thing.
Yeah,
So yeah.
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 Oh, what an amazing conversation. Oh,
Yeah.
love that, Lucy.
Oh,
Thank
me
you so
too.
much for coming
Really
on.
enjoyed it too, Vicky.
And
Thank you.
I will catch up with you very soon. Thank you so much. Bye for now.